from the bedside to the interventional side, from the manufacturing industrial side, and then obviously from the data side, how data impacts all of us. I would like to please welcome the panelists one by one on stage. We start with, from the bedside, Andreas Trojan. Here, please, Andreas, professor in oncology, a leader in how to detect and manage the most complicated disease that we have. Please take a seat on the first one here. Then we have from the industrial side, Richard Fritschi. He has been the CEO of two of the world's leading companies in medical technology. We have from the data side, from data gathering, analysis, interpretation side, the inventor and the build-up of blockchain for the world's largest software company called Microsoft, Yorkie. Please welcome from Seattle, Yorkie Rhodes. We have from the industry side, how can we leverage the new technology across the industry? We have all these ideas, but industries are big and they are boring and nobody wants to take a risk. The not invented here syndrome is very complex and it is so pervasive that the big become elephants and eventually die and young one comes up. Well, to prevent such a thing, we hire Stephanie. Stephanie built the new platform, the largest Japanese pharmaceutical company called Takeda in Los Angeles, how to build the new innovation into new companies and make them an integral part of your company, but also other companies. Please welcome Stephanie from Los Angeles. All this is good and right. We talk about data, we talk about distribution of data, but wait a minute, there can be also a whole lot of funny stuff going on with data. We can have people sneak into our data, abuse our data, and do funny stuff. So we need security. And for that, we reach out to the world's largest security company and the head of the cybersecurity, who built up the cybersecurity team for IBM. Please welcome Andreas Wasby from IBM headquarters. Now, we suffer a lot when we break a bone, and we suffer even more if we have a surgery without having anesthesiology. And guess what? Davos is not built on the World Economic Forum. The very fact that Davos is so big and a little bit a strange town, because there is no nucleus, because they couldn't get enough houses built in order to treat the tuberculosis 100 years ago. When you see these homes, all these balconies are to push out the beds, to take the patients into the sun and put them back again. Well, guess what? The business model lasted not too long because antibiotics came along. And the whole thing went down. Fortunately enough, somebody invented the skiing just on the other side of the valley in St. Moritz. And what happens when you ski? You fall down and break your bones. Well, hell, we need some surgical tools to fix the bones again. And again, it was some innovators called Maurice Müller and Allgöver and so from Basel who founded an association called the Applied Osteosynthesis Foundation, AO, which the headquarters is here in a big research center, and they tried out nails and plates and screws, and then they had to have some conventional center, which is called the Convention Center here in Davos. Well, what happened? The whole thing went generic, and we became safe for skiers. And now the business model went down too. They sold up for Johnson & Johnson. Here comes Klaus Schwab and builds a big, beautiful World Economic Forum, brings you all here. So Davos is reinventing itself. But more important, nothing would have happened like that if we don't have the surgeons. Please welcome Walter Weber as the head of University Hospital in Zurich, the largest in Switzerland, from the surgical bedside. Very much involved also in the policy making from the proper application and the proper healthcare structure. Last but not least, coming back to data. We got the data, we distribute data, but all your data from the banks, from the healthcare, from the shopping centers, who owns it? Amazon uses it, Facebook uses it. Where is your money? It's your data. They make money selling your data. Well, that is a problem. And we have to start with the healthcare data. Your X-rays and they're used for research purposes and so on. Nobody knows who owns it. Ernst Hafen launched the biggest initiative that we have currently going on in order, who owns the data? It will lead in a national referendum to legalize and properly structure who owns the data, because this is exceptionally important in order to take the next step in the digital revolution is the ownership. It's an asset. Please welcome Ernst Hafen. So we have the whole value chain of healthcare present. Now about the structure. We start with the individual introduction of yourselves, what you do first, and then how you apply digital technologies, how they can improve your business. And then we start with a series of question statements that we have seen before, which then concludes with a Q&A. So I would like to start chronologically. Please, Andreas, you are a leading expert in oncology, the most complex disease that we have. It's a disease that most money flows into because there is no standard treatment methodology. We have knives, we have drugs, and we have beams. And we have a lot of data that go into that to make that you can make a good decision that we get rid of this strange disease that still is so pervasive across society. Please.
Welcome. Thank you very much for the invitation, Caspar. I'm very pleased and happy to provide you some of the ideas that, in fact, came up from my long-term engagement as an oncologist and a physician. I've been working in the university hospital in Zurich, also Switzerland. I'm still engaged there for research reasons. I was spending some time in the United States in the Dana-Farber Cancer Center. And now I'm more or less a high turnover oncologist in a private clinic, which is the Hirslanden Clinic and also the breast center. So what I realized, not only from living in Switzerland, but I realized that patients like Heidi, they like to be very structured. And the more complex the treatment is getting and the more complex the diagnostic setup is getting, the more the patients need to be incorporated in a decision making. And for this decision making, we have done trials to follow the patients in terms of their outcome. The patient-reported outcome, that means that patients in an app or in an electronic device put in their standardized and structured data in order to improve their treatment outcome, the treatment adherence, and also the outcome of the disease. And of course, we're also keen as using this data for research.
Thank you so much. Richard, you come from the industry side. You managed two of the world's leading companies as a CEO, first in medical technology, then in osteosynthesis, then the second one in injection devices. Injection devices sounds very boring, but I tell you, the injection device to apply the drugs that Andreas is using in oncology are awfully complicated. They're so complicated that there's only really one industry or one company that became the leader, and you were the CEO of that very successfully. Now you apply all your know-how, how to select new technologies in order to create better products for better outcome in patients.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you, Caspar, for inviting me to this fantastic audience. I worked for a long time in orthopedics, and I worked together with AO, and I was really at the start when implants or orthopedic implants didn't exist yet. And I saw how fast the innovation went on. Today that's solved. The problems in orthopedic are more or less solved. I think Professor Wetter would agree to that. So then I moved into diagnostics more and diabetes with injection devices where you can inject fluid drugs. That's also the future. More and more fluid drugs will come on the market. I believe most of us in this room here will sooner or later inject and not swallow pills. And now I have really started a new venture with some fantastic people. It's a company called Implantica. The founder developed some 20 years ago the gastric band and solved really a lot of problems in obesity. He sold the company to Johnson & Johnson for 175 million and invested most of that money into a new venture called Implantica. Has worked on that for 10 years. We are now ready to launch the first product in about 2-3 months. We expect CE mark for a product that is reflux. It's solving the reflux problem, but it's an implant. But what's even broader is the patent portfolio he has developed for so-called smart implants. And I will show you now a video what this is all about. It's about sensors that you can implant that can communicate inside information to the outside. So that's very interesting for Amazon, Google, and all these guys, but and you as well. But we transfer the data on a watch or on a mobile, so we are in control of the data. And we can also manage with these sensors products like against urine control or obesity again, or aneurysm control, you know, if you have an aneurysm problem. Today, more people die in the US only because of aneurysm than in car accidents. But you can implant that, and it controls whether your aneurysm is a problem or not, whether you have to do surgery or not. So please, if you can show the video, Davos, please.
E-health is the future of healthcare and the fastest growing medical treatment field. Today, numerous efforts are made to monitor personal health data. Implantica has developed E-in vivo, an implant based on Implantica's e-health platform, to monitor and collect data from within the body, which can be easily accessible from outside the body. E-in vivo utilizes Implantica's wireless energized platform technology.
The delivery of the measured medical data is collected and analyzed wirelessly to a device and directly integrated to a database for the caregiver's analysis. As such, E-in vivo is designed as a standalone implant to provide early detection and easy monitoring of diseases, or as a supplement to Implantica's other smart medical implants. The information is collected and processed by the hospital station MediMaster. E-in vivo is a powerful control unit with a microchip presently capable of simultaneously collecting, processing and sending information from up to 15 sensors. Health parameters could be measured in different body locations. A multitude of tests could be performed anytime over the course of many years and sent out from the body. E-in vivo, once implanted in the body, can be charged, controlled and adjusted wirelessly through intact skin. The patients will be able to personally monitor their own health status using a smartwatch or a smartphone.
So I'm the chairman of this exciting journey. The CFO is also here, and the chief strategy manager is also here. So if ever you have questions after the panel, we are ready to answer to those. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard. So now it gets very exciting. Yorkie came here all the way. His friend Donald Kosman, who actually is a very close friend of Ernst and built the cloud for Microsoft and is now the head of research Microsoft, which runs primarily with, among others, healthcare data and his personal concern. Introduce you Yorkie, and I'm very thankful that you could be here, because I think new technology without blockchain is one of the essential, let's say, ingredients in this soup of new technologies. And you were the one who structured firstly with Microsoft, and you applied across different sectors. Please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes, good. I'm not the inventor of blockchain for sure, but I did co-found our work at Microsoft after returning to Microsoft about 3 years ago. The reason I returned was because I realized that, as in the example of your company, you have all of this sensor data and different types of things happening around wireless, and particularly what you can do with wireless and sensors inside of your body, which generates a tremendous amount of data. And in order to make sense of this data, we need massive hyperscale technology like clouds, for example. And I actually set out on this journey to plant both my feet firmly in the cloud world. And about 6 months into the journey, I took a U-turn or a detour and discovered blockchain. And blockchain is a highly complex, deep topic, probably as complex as AI or some of the developments that we've had in the medical field. It took me on my journey about 6 months to study full-time to get to a point of comfort where I could go and actually talk to someone in the community and not make a fool of myself. It also is a very fast-moving space. So if you think you know something today, next week you'll probably be out of date. So I spend a great deal of time trying to just keep up with the communities around the world that are developing wonderful new technologies. So at Microsoft, we obviously look at how do we get adoption and help cross the chasm of waves of technology. This is, in my career, probably the 4th technology wave that I've done that on, and it's an exciting opportunity. It's highly disruptive. So when you hear CEOs like Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan say negative things, that's because either he's uninformed or he's feeling very nervous because of the disruption capabilities of this technology. I would also say that for those of us who are not technologists in the audience, this is a community that's a brand new ecosystem and community, and therefore every skill is necessary to help build from an economist, like someone who's studying economy, or other capabilities. It's not just about mathematics and cryptography. And if you look at some of the brilliant computer science minds in the space, yes, they have tremendous knowledge in that field. But there's a whole bunch of game economics, network economics associated with actually making sense of this. And there's also very social constructs that are changing dramatically. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about data ownership, but fundamentally this is about decentralization. And it's a little bit odd for a company like Microsoft that has very centralized technology to be talking about decentralization, but we feel that this is a wave that is happening that's very important. And if you look at regulatory things that are happening around the world, like GDPR and PSD2, you can't really solve...
So, what are these abbreviations?
Yes, GDPR is basically about consumer data ownership, essentially. Regulation coming out of Germany, but basically for the whole EU. And then PSD2 is similar. It's an evolution of all of the consumer privacy laws that we've had. But basically, there's a mandate that says if as a corporation you don't allow consumers to take their data back, that you will be penalized, right, in terms of fees. And most corporations assume that they own people's data, right? And it's just, so there's this decentralization movement going on, and we actually announced just, I think it was this morning, the support of a nonprofit called ID 2020, which focuses on identity for humanitarian purposes, and it's fundamentally decentralized identity when we think about it that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now comes, well, you are the queen today. You are in the middle.
Where's
so
my
you're
crown?
responsible for everything that flows from the queen, which is new. Stephanie, you are really responsible. You built up from scratch this new incubator in Los Angeles for the largest company of Japan. How to integrate this beautiful tech? Oh, it's interesting. You have the IBM, Microsoft next to each other here. So they better be nice because you will apply their technology. Please.
I do. So thank you so much for letting me share the afternoon with you. some friends who were drinking earlier. It's my first Davos, so it's quite a nice event. So so here's what I like to do. I'm kind of a thief. I like to steal shamelessly from people like who are here on the panel, right? And take these things and put them together in ways and repackage them for use. So. I don't know if any of you have ever had a loved one who was sick. When I was younger, my grandmother had Alzheimer's disease. And one of the last ways we were able to communicate with her was on my, do you remember the Apple IIe, the Macintosh? Yeah, I took some little programming out of a magazine and it said, "Happy birthday." And she remembered everyone. For like a brief second, and then that was the last time we interacted with her. So for me, it's quite personal. How we marry technology and healthcare, but in a very serious way. Not to say that things like fitness trackers and some wearable sensors aren't useful, but we're looking at ways to medically validate some of these ideas, so I can concretely say how I can help you, and do it in a very personalized way, knowing that you aren't like the person next to you, and the way you use technology and the way you live your life. So everything's personalized. So what we've been doing is basically finding areas that no one's paying attention to, those kind of white space areas where there's a problem, but no one's figured out how to pull all the stuff together, and create companies and spin them out. So part of it is a little bit of venture funding companies, a little bit is creating, and then spinning them out. So that's why it probably has a host of cities, Tokyo, Los Angeles, but I actually do it all from here in Zurich. So very happy to be part of the panel. Thanks.
Thank you so much. You're really good. How do you say in English? The good wife?
The what?
The good wife, when you assist, in a birth process of.
Oh, the good wife. Oh, okay. I'd rather be the bad mistress.
Okay. I didn't want to mention the mistress word, but if you say, okay, we have the bad mistress between the two, whatever. Okay, so we have. Now here comes the other. Now, Andreas, you're from IBM. Now you have an enormous interesting trajectory. You also spent some time in Basel. You did a PhD correctly in Basel, and. Maybe say from the IBM perspective, probably nothing would work if we don't have the trust in the technology and if we don't feel safe that our data is not misused or that the computers that are steered by the data are going crazy during a surgery and so on. And you provide the security. Please.
Yeah, thanks very much for this intro. Yeah, security is a cross-cutting topic. Right? There are all aspects, so in every domain, so whenever you see new technology, there are also security risks. And typically when I'm on such a panel here, so security is the last topic you talk about. So I really feel honored to be here close to the middle to talk about security.
What is the first thing you encounter when you come to Davos before you reach the town? Is security?
No, not so much. Actually, we had a discussion saying actually it's so easy to get to Davos.
Oh,
and nobody checks you, right? We arrived by train and there are no checks, so I could walk here into the store and
so you could be a Trojan horse.
Whatever, right?
Whatever. Sorry.
Right, so healthcare and security, there's a lot of tradition here. So since many, many years, you see research papers how you could provide access control policies. So there are a lot of interesting use cases. You have patients, you have doctors, you have insurance companies. Everybody would like to get access to data and how to control this. So this is a historical topic, I would say. Now with all the advances with new technologies, data sharing, or the blockchain, or surgery, all the sensor technology, so the security risks get more and more eminent. And we have seen all kinds of attacks in the healthcare domain. And also if you look at the costs per data or record breach, so in healthcare, so we see the highest costs. So there are statistics saying, so per healthcare record breached, so the costs are about $350. And this is actually across all the industries, so these are the highest numbers. So there's certainly work to be done. And what interests me personally is also all the sensor technology. And there are well-known examples, I think, of pacemakers. So cyber attacks against pacemakers. Bad guys taking control of a pacemaker. So there's a lot of kind of bad opportunity for misuse. So my background here is not so much in healthcare, although actually I caught up a little bit over the past few days. So my daughter had an accident last Sunday. She had surgery yesterday. So I spent basically whole evening, whole night at the hospital, University Hospital of Zurich.
Right.
So I caught up a little bit and looking forward to the discussion here.
Thank you so much. Walter, here we have a magician on the panel. The magician, your magic comes through your hands. Your hands are the most important tool. Increasingly, the robot starts to imitate your hands. What are you going to do with your beautiful art?
So I think it's completely wrong to believe that the most important part of the surgeons are the hands. The most important part is the brain, to analyze what you want to do. And I expect that you can train a surgeon, that he can transform a medical plan into a procedure. And by saying that, yes, we are using more and more robots in surgery, but not robots who operate the patient from the beginning to the end. It is robotic-assisted surgery. And this has really improved the quality. And you mentioned in your augmented reality, we have now virtual reality, which allows us to do what we are currently do to prepare a complex procedure. A complex procedure is prepared on images, on physiological data, and we have a plan before we go into surgery, at least when it's complex surgery, not these easy things. And this you can simulate with virtual reality. You can simulate this. And there are tools now that in the robot we are using with joysticks, that we can have augmented reality, that we can get the images, reconstruct the plan, what we do, and we have it both in front of us, the reality and the augmented reality. So by saying this, the hands can be replaced, the mechanical part, but the whole orchestration of a procedure still needs to be done with human brain, but intelligence, artificial intelligence and robotic technologies is really the future of surgery.
The future in robotics. Would you say that the future excellence and the professionals would do good to start early with the game station and the PlayStation at home?
Of course, it has a lot of similarities, because you look on a screen and you do something here with your hand and you manipulate what's happening there. The thing is, I never played on a PlayStation, and it took me a few minutes or hours to understand the system. These systems are so well concepted that you can train yourself on these systems. But we have simulation programs now, and before a surgeon uses the robot in a human being, he has to undergo these teaching programs.
Just like the AEO Foundation did the convention center, and you train how to put the screw properly into the bone, which I had to train repetitively. Yeah. Thank you so much. Ernst, now coming back to data, so you have data, bedside data, you know, the good, no, what kind of mistress you said you are?
Mistress, bad mistress.
A mistress never says.
Okay, very good. Now going back to the data. Now we had the data from the IBM, from the cybersecurity, the blockchain side. Now here it comes an issue that has to be stored and decided who owns what. Ernst.
Yeah, so data in healthcare, it's practically all about personal data. It's about your data, right? And you're actually all billionaires when it comes to genome data. Each one of us has 6 billion letters in their genome, in their DNA, and that's just one data set. And for healthcare, very important for Andreas's patient-reported outcome, it's all about personal data. And who is the ultimate aggregator and owner of the data? It should be you, right? You're the only one who can combine your shopping data from this morning with your genome data and your medical records. It's only you. Google will never be able to do that. But we've been extremely careless in the way we treat our data. All of us have downloaded apps for free on our smartphones. Well, they're not really for free. You pay with your data, right? And everyone tries to get at your data, to profile you, to send you advertisements, etc. And in healthcare, this device that is only 10 years old, in 5 years from now, this will be a medical device with which you can also make phone calls, because it will integrate the internal sensors, and those data are all your data. Now, we've been giving them away, but we have now a much more different role for our health and for the health of all of society if we find a trusted environment. We can either entrust all the data like we did to Google and Facebook, or we can say, wait a minute, data can be copied. I can leave my data with Facebook and with Google, but I want to get a copy of that data. And if we, in our view, organize this data in a cooperative fashion, in a bank that is owned by the citizens themselves, as a not-for-profit cooperative, where we decide what to do with the data, because I may want to give Andreas not only my medical data, but also my fitness data and my nutrition data, because that's important for future diagnosis. So we establish a new data economy that is owned by the citizens, where citizens decide what to do with the data, offer them for research, for new services. IBM, any startup company can offer data services that allow you to lose weight or to be faster on a marathon, etc. But it's all cooperative. It's owned by the citizen, democratically organized, and the value goes back to society, and not only to the shareholders of Google and Facebook. So the MIDATA initiative is building cooperatives, citizen-owned cooperatives, where citizens store their personal data and decide what to do with them.
Perfect.
Because in then, one last point, in then we need to make sense of the data, we need artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence alone is not enough. Combine that with human intelligence, our brains, that we want to contribute actively to this solution of a medical problem that we may have or someone else will have. Artificial intelligence plus human intelligence is much more efficient than what Google tries to do with just artificial intelligence alone.
A true Swiss.
Democratic.
Democratic. Thank you so much for the opening panel dialogue. A very old Latin statement is primum non nocere or nocere. I was just taught by our professor in Latin standing at the door, Rigel. Primum non nocere means first do no harm. So far, it is the doctor at the patient who takes decisions, the ultimate decision to go in and do something or give something to the patient. He's also the prime responsibility taker if something goes wrong. Now it seems that all this new technology is beautiful. It's a robotic artificial intelligence. It takes the data from a cloud. It mixes it up with some IBM, Microsoft programs, comes out with some structured decision-making process, and then a robot will go into the patient, do something, and then a pill dispenser will give you the pills at home. So is the doctor still necessary to be at the bedside? And who will take the responsibility if something goes wrong? As Andreas just said, if somebody is tampering with the pacemaker and kind of a steady going patients become like Olympic champions because the pacemaker tells them to run faster. So is the new technology taking away the responsibility decision-making position from the doctor? Or is it more supportive? Or is it actually eliminating the medical doctor as we know today? Maybe starting with the ones who are the fierce proponent of data, Yorkie from Microsoft. What do you think? Do you still need the doctor in 20 years' time?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that there's, I think the bigger question here actually is, at least from my perspective, is controlled and verified data sources is actually very important. And certainly when we look at data and technology that we have today, there are countless examples of where we've had breaches of data and even breaches of IoT and sensor devices. So this is a very, very important area, and particularly from a security and a verification perspective. And one of the things that, and the qualities that we look at in blockchain is it is a way to create verification in a trustless way. So the technology I think that we have today to look at data ownership by consumers as well as verified data sources is much better than we've had in the past. So there are certainly some new opportunities, but yeah, absolutely. We still need the specialists in the different fields who have the skills to actually direct the robots or the agents, whether they're digital or physical.
That's good. So the doctor is still necessary?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. So Andreas, you still have a future. So
yeah,
good.
I would agree. If you would ask me, I would definitely agree. May I ask if you... Thank you very much. First of all, no, really, what is important and what has been mentioned before, if the technology is sound and there's no manipulation and the data readout is fine, it's perfect. Artificial intelligence probably will have to have some support. If you have the calculation on certain events, and then you have maybe two options, perhaps the doctor and the patient report, or the communication between the doctor and the patient or the treatment center is going to give you one of the potential right answers on that. So therefore, I think also from the emotional side, of course, it's very important, and I trust that doctors will have in the communication and in the trust a certain...
So you give the trust through emotions to the patient, which a computer cannot do.
At a certain point, if I may answer this, yes, because we have been doing a study and we figured out, that an app that comes just alone to the patient has a different quality as if the patient would talk and discuss about the data that have been monitored or put in the electronic diary, and they were discussed with the doctor. That makes a clear difference. People become more insecure if they don't have the reference with the doctor and the discussion with the doctor. And there's a learning curve, of course, and at some point maybe that is not necessary anymore, but in the beginning and to set it up, that's very important to have this interaction.
So here we have two views that the doctor still will exist in the future. Now here comes something in your logic which puts a sting into your logic, and it's Andreas Westby. Westby means wasp in English. And you come from, I say, well, wait a minute, you don't trust the data? I have cybersecurity. I make it trustful. So you think also that the doctor is still necessary, because after all, say, my data is safe, my algorithm is safe, what the heck, the doctor is no longer necessary.
No, I second very much what was said before. So we still need the human in the loop. And also from an IBM perspective, so we say, so artificial intelligence, cognitive technology, it's an assistant to the human. And also when it comes to security, right? So as a human, I don't have a chance to decide myself whether I can trust the data. So here still I need technology, but at the end, it's the human who has to decide whether a certain action, for example in a surgery, should be performed or not. So
we will keep the doctor in the loop.
Yeah, it's a boring panel, right? So maybe unthink here.
Walter, please.
I don't believe that in 20 years from now we still have the same system with doctors involved. At least for problems which are easier to solve and which are more standardized. I don't believe that human beings will be advised by doctors. They will be advised by concepts, and other people will be the transmitter of these advices. I'm completely convinced that these modern technologies will heavily influence in the next few years what will go on. I fully agree, on the other hand, when it comes to more complex decisions, even to a complex cancer treatment or a complex procedure, then it really needs a human being and a doctor with the experience, also for everything what you have already said, because already now we are not able to make decisions when we are asked for a second opinion and get data sent in from abroad. And we look at the data, we have everything, CT scan, lab work, physiological data. We are unable to give a good advice unless we see the human being. Because when it's a complex problem, we have to know who is this person, what is his expectation of life. And I think this will go on. The combination of data and wishes of patient and patient characteristics, which are often not so easy to put into a description.
Thank you so much. Stephanie, you are at the cradle of new stuff coming out, which will slowly might, push the doctor further away. Because after all these new things will be better than what he had before.
So I love divergent thinking. What is your doctor today? It's someone who has great expertise, who helps you get better, fundamentally, right? And so you're going to have all these converging technologies that can serve that same role. And I agree with you, Andreas, which is it'll allow physicians to spend more time with their patients, quality of care. It'll make empathy a prerequisite, which I don't know how you felt with all of your physician interactions in the past. Some people have it and some people don't, right? So any way you can supplement that. But I actually think that the better the data, the better the decisions, the better the outcomes. So if you're always focusing on that chain of data, right, whether you blockchain it, whether you keep it in an EMR, or however you get that, and however you share that, that will allow people surrounding you to start integrating your care. So you don't have a point of contact. I mean, you mentioned second opinion, right? Has anyone here gotten a second opinion? It's a pain in the ass. It takes a long time. It's inconvenient. You don't know who to go to. How do I trust them? How do I trust what I'm getting, right? So what do? You go to your friends and family. You have word of mouth. You go on the internet. So how can you eliminate that white noise of data that you're looking at as a healthcare consumer, trying to take care of yourself? So I would actually like to see the burden of responsibility shift a little bit from the doctor to the patient and everyone surrounding you, because I think you're going to get just better care by having that. And the data is an enabler, quite frankly.
The data is an enabler, Yorkie.
Yeah, I was going to say, we already see that today, and to your point, we have fitness trackers that compare what we're doing in terms of our activities with others, essentially crowdsourced comparisons, which allow us then to understand that maybe I'm not doing what I should as a 50-year-old, right, and compared to other people. So the data actually is enabling the consumer to be much more informed. And I think, to your point about doctors being able to access much more granular data over time will allow them to be much more informed and effective in the short times that we actually see them. And I have to apologize that I have to leave for another panel, so I'll step out now.
So thank you so much, Jörg. Maybe a quick applause that you could come all the way from Seattle to us. Thank you so much. Ernst, do we still need the doctor?
Yes, for very special situations. I think Eric Topol, a cardiologist in the States, wrote a book, The Patient Will See You Now, a book that I actually had all our first-year medical students read, because mobile technology, sensors that you collect 365 days a year continuously will be put together in a way that monitors your health and goes much more in prevention than the doctor that you see every 2 years, if you are healthy, right? So it will pick up drug interactions, it will pick up things because it knows your profile, it will define your health, and it will recognize when something goes wrong. It will change healthcare in a way that there is medical data advisors, there are data scientists that may be not able to operate, but they can make sense and help you to make sense of this, of your data, which apps you should use, which trackers you should use, which sensors you should use. So the patient is going to be, or the citizen, the healthy citizen is going to be much more important. It's almost like in economics, right? I mean, in the Middle Ages, people, the feudal lords said, we cannot give you money. You will go to the restaurant and drink it all and spend it all on women, right? And now every one of us has a bank account. We all handle our money individually, we invest it individually, and there is a huge financial industry. There will be a health industry that will be completely different from the one that we have now, digital health industry, and hospitals will get smaller and smaller. I still will go to Walter Weder when I have to do an operation, and not to the robot though.
I'm so glad to hear, because I have to say that there is a very, I don't know how many of you know the kind of the political construction of Switzerland. We have 26 cantons. In the US, 50 states, you have 26 cantons. Everything is almost the same, except you have one president and 7 council. But there is a one small state or canton, is called Appenzell. And Walter is from there. We are from here. And Danny Helder, a third one, is from there too. He's probably hiding here somewhere, who's at the IMF, the head of the IMF. So it's very rare there are 3 of this Mickey Mouse canton being present, and we all share a common thing. We wear the cows around the belt. So it's a very privilege for you to be here. Thank you. Now, a question from my side is, now we have all this beautiful technology, and it is awfully expensive. Today, a new drug on average costs 1.2 billion. I don't know the latest number, it keeps on rising. 1.2 billion, I repeat this number, because the second largest country of Africa has 100 million people today and has a GDP of about $42 billion per year. One new drug, 1.3 billion. So about make this one time 20, and you have a GDP for one single pill. I mean, it's amazingly expensive that we can profit for the good, but who can afford it? What is the use of all the new technology if only very few can afford it? Does it lead to a possible selection of the one who can afford to live longer and better and healthier? Or is there a way that we can kind of make available all this beautiful new technology and pills also to the ones who cannot afford it? I would like to open these questions to maybe starting with Richard, because you invest actively in all these new companies, and obviously you want to have a return on your investment. 1.3 billion for a pill, you're more in technology, but the economics are not so much different. How do you address that issue? How do you make available your beautiful new innovations for the ones who can maybe not afford it?
I mean, this is definitely a huge challenge for the whole industry, but we have to find ways to make it accessible to also the poorer people in this world, and there are many of them. And I know a lot of people that do that in pharma, in biotech, like Kiran Mazumdar from Biocon. She really develops insulin to be affordable in India, and I'm on the board of a pharma company in Bangladesh, and they do the same. I mean, they make it affordable for their local markets, and that's going to be a huge challenge then for the big guys, because these so-called smaller companies, they grow fast. This pharma company in Bangladesh has been built 10 years ago. They employ now 8,000 people. They have now started to export their drugs into the European market with much lower cost because they can afford it. But it's latest technology. So there will be the pressure coming, and when we look into volumes, then we have to make it affordable. But the challenge is when you have new technology, you invest hundreds of millions or billions into a new technology. I mean, you have to get a return on this. So how do you do that? Or one product is, where you have a drug in the US against hepatitis, and you have to pay for 90 days taking one pill. In the US, I think it's $80,000 to $100,000. That's really difficult. But the same technology you can have in Bangladesh, the same pill, you can have it for $1,000. So what people do is they go from the West to Bangladesh, get the pill, and fly back.
Norbert will not like that.
So
Norbert will not like that.
Norbert will not like that, but this is happening, I can tell you. And
Actually,
I mean,
he's supporting it, by the way.
We all are challenged by that. I mean, I look in my companies as well. It's always a big challenge. How do you position and price your product? And you wanna sell it obviously at the price where you have a payback rather sooner than later, and you might miss a few people that would desperately need it. So I don't have a clear answer to that challenge.
Well, this is really important to know, but you try to find ways to make it available to the ones. You mentioned the hepatitis C, you're referring to Harvoni, the drug developed by Norbert Bischofberg from Gilead Sciences, invented by Remo Shinasi from the Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. He was also the one who invented more than any others drugs against HIV, which are now at Truvada, which are 3 drugs in a pill plus a booster makes 4 drugs in one pill. Today, HIV is at the stage that people they die with it, not from it anymore, if you are properly treated. It is an unbelievable advantage. I mean, it lifts hundreds of millions of people from going down with the disease at age 40, otherwise being healthy, to become fully productive citizen, being much, much easier treatable than diabetes. And it's really thanks to predominantly Ray Shinasi, one of the big innovators, with Pharmacet Harvoni of hepatitis C. But I would like to mention, because there is a lot of dirt thrown at these companies, and I take Gilead again as an example. When I met Gilead the first time, I would like to open this little story, was 1994. The stock price, the share price was $120 million US. Norbert Bischofberg and John Martin just entered the company, had nothing. It was an anti-sense technology which nobody believed in. So they come, and Norbert is a graduate from ETH in Zurich, also originally a chemist, organic chemistry. Wanted to do Harvard, George Whitesides, and then came to Gilead, and he started tinkering around with new ways. They had no money. Nobody would give them money. We forget that. Nobody would give them money. For 10 years, they didn't make a single penny. He had one lucky shot. It's called the bird flu. And the bird flu, he developed this drug called Tamiflu, which was distributed by Roche, that gave them a little bit of money with the royalties to continue to tinker around. And because he had never money, they were desperate all the time. Nobody would give them money. Gilead was really the ugly duckling of the Wall Street. I mean, really nobody. And then slowly they started. And one of the main reasons was because they found a way called access program to make available the drugs even to ones that cannot afford. And you're right, you have to find a balance. But they are very sure. They do not make money in emerging markets. Bill Gates might be the distributor of the drugs, the postman. But Bill Gates had not invented a single thing there. That was all back to Norbert, Remo Shinasi, and Gilead Sciences through the access program. And it is rarely highlighted, this issue, but they're very modest people. But thank you very much. So there are ways to make it available for the ones who need it. while also balancing it to make a return for the shareholders. It's not easy, but it is doable. And you, as you mentioned, you are on the board of several companies to make it accessible through emerging markets. Sometimes come back to our markets for the ones, but also try to return money to the shareholders through new innovations. One doesn't work without the others. Without risk-taking and without investment, we are not going to have innovation. Walter, from the bedside maybe, we heard from the interest investments from the bedside. You are exposed every day to this dilemma. Is something too expensive? Is it affordable? Can we do this surgery? Would you rather not do it? Is price the key driver, or is the well-being of the patient the key driver?
We are in the lucky situation in Switzerland at the moment that we can offer the same treatment to everybody at the moment. And currently we are driven by the needs of the patient, basically. And as I said, it's a lucky situation. On the other hand, we are much more thinking what is worth for the patient to be done, especially when it comes to end of life. Patient with advanced disease, cancer, other disease. How much do we want to offer as a treatment? Each treatment has side effects. This kind of discussions are ongoing in our daily practice. But it's mainly driven by activity, or it's mainly driven by activity and side effects of activities rather than we don't want to afford it. Usually when we believe it brings value to the patient's life, we offer it to the patient independent from his financial status.
So the well-being of the patient is absolute key for you when you take a decision.
Yes.
Yes. And also you are from the administrative side, because you're exposed to budgeting, you're exposed to price pressure, you're also involved in policy making in the healthcare system. I probably from the other side, cut cost, cut cost, cut cost. We cannot afford, cannot afford, cannot afford. Yeah. How do you balance the two views?
So from the hospital board, we put pressure on efficiency, on quality, but not on quality of treatment. So when we put pressure on each division and department and on doctors, and so it is by being better organized, shorter stay in the hospital, better efficiency, planning, and so on. But we are not
the quality.
Interfering into the quality and say, these chemotherapy or these oncological drugs, which cost a lot, should not be used anymore. It's not influenced by the hospital board.
Awesome. Thank you. Who else is exposed to the cost factor? I think from the IBM side, you're a little bit less exposed to that question. From Ernst, you would like to offer in a cooperative way the data free available for research to all, be it industry, be it individuals. You're very much promoting that, which is a very noble cause. Then maybe from Andrea's side, oncology, the most expensive drugs next to the hepatitis one. Okay, today, what is the most expensive drug? Actually, it's an orphan disease drug. It's 420,000 for, I think it's a PNH. But that's very rare.
It's a cellular drug, and it's going to be very expensive.
It's very expensive. But oncology, I mean, for now, for the new ones, I mean, you're going to CAR-T and so on. CAR-T is now priced at around, what is it? I can't remember, 125?
Depending on the country,
depending
150 to 250 minimum.
50,000 to 150,000, that's the newest technology, CAR-T. It's CAR-T, maybe it's
it's a T cell which is directed against an antigen which is very well defined, and that works very well in hematological malignancies and lymphoma and in leukemia. However, now there's a lot of research going on for the similar treatment in solid cancers, meaning that you have to take the whole genome, look for, after sequencing, you have to look for antigenic epitopes, and on that you might develop or design a new T cell receptor with some copper.
Today, just Juno was sold. You saw that.
No, I don't have. Do I look like I have shares? I have no shares. So I have a heartbeat, which is, you know, I'm living at the beginnings. I have to say, my heart really works a lot and still beating to a great part for the university. And what I think about the data and who owns the data, and what I think about the costs and who's making returns and so on. I understand there's a lot of investments, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of costs for the computers. But at the very end, I think we also, if we talk about platforms, you know, the conventional doctor will die probably. You know, there's also studies of biomedicine at the ETH and Zurich and so on. So these are the people who are going to be able to read the novel data and transfer them to the patients or to the community in order to make the decisions. And if you think that, for instance, for some breast cancer entities and tumors, there was one drug 16 years ago. Now we have like 10 drugs, and nobody understands in what sequence you should go and give it in which patient. That is so complex now that of course, we need all this data, and we have to have these algorithms to understand and to make sense as a doctor or as a medical doctor. But I still think we have to give back some of this information to the facilities, to the universities, and to the learning centers where we skill our next generation of people.
It does consent that you would agree with Ernst to give some data to the research for free.
Definitely.
Ernst, you just
and ethical review and ethical so on, and everything we need to have in society, here in our society.
Yeah, so given the fact that we collect and we should have the right to own all this data as patients or citizens, this puts us also into a different obligation to give something back and to contribute this data back to research. Because every operation that you do, a patient could have a smartphone app that daily records sensible data. So you have of every patient that leaves a doctor's office, you can have a data stream coming back. And that's real-world patient-reported outcome that the patient can even comment. That will make drug administration safer, treatment safer. You learn much more quickly what works, what not. But that's an obligation of us as citizens to contribute to that. But for that, we need a fair platform, and not having thinking that we are just drained from all our data for some commercial purposes.
Fair sharing. Oh, Walter, yeah.
Such platforms exist. So, for example, we have a big data warehouse at the university hospital, and each patient, when he enters the hospital, he has to undersign informed consent if he wishes. And practically all patients say you can use our data anonymously in this data warehouse. And this includes enormous amount of data. You know, the tissue, the blood values, the physiological values. We have the real-time data from the ICU when patients are developing crisis on the intensive care, ICU's intensive care unit. And so we have real-time data, and they are all stored now in these main computers. And any group who wants to do a research project is allowed to use this data when it goes through the ethical process and so on and so on. And at the moment, there are multiple research projects going on using the data from the data warehouse. Of course, it's an organization. It comes from an organization, but it always has to get started somewhere.
Stephanie?
So I think we're being too incremental. Like just step by step. So I look at things that are a little bit more breakthrough, that are not to say that what we're doing here is not helpful, right? But we're looking at things, to answer your question before, of scale, right? True scale, right? And cheap. So it doesn't matter if you have any money. So we were looking at there's some science that actually shows that just by playing a game on your iPhone, you think you're playing a game. But what I can do is through your camera, when you take a selfie, I can actually measure the diameter of your pupil and actually correlate that to dementia scores. So I know if you're losing your cognitive function over time. Right? We have this science, it's proven, right? You're able to take your iPhone, set it up. If you've ever had an injury, I don't know if you've ever been a bad skier, I have, gotten injured, you have to go for physical therapy after, but then you forget exactly how to do it, or you don't want to do it. There's ways that you can use the phone where it shows you put yourself in there, and it's kind of like those dance games where you're actually doing it properly and it's recording physical therapy, right? So these things cost no more than what you already have with your phone, right? Which most people have a smartphone. And so I think the democratization of technology in healthcare comes in micro ways that you probably don't actually see, right? There's a company I was looking at a few weeks ago at JP Morgan where you type on the keyboard, and what they found out is that every person, if you type like this, or if you can type like this, you have almost like a thumbprint of how you type. And that correlates, actually, they understand what your typing thumbprint looks like and can correlate that to Parkinson's tremors, right? So you're already talking about early diagnosis of disease being able to integrate into your life, that you'll never know you're being monitored, you won't have to give data, it's all being done, and then your doctor will just call you when something looks off. That, I think, is kind of the stuff that's existing, but you don't probably hear about because it's not sexy, it's not big money, it's not big drug prices, right? So it kind of goes under the radar.
So the revolution starts with incremental evolutionary steps.
I think you have to look elsewhere, right? Big platforms have been tried. They tend not to scale. It's also very expensive with legacy systems to integrate anything with anything, right? So it's a barrier. Plus, I guess maybe you'll agree with me a little bit. In science, we tend to like our own ideas, right, and make sure that our own ideas and our own research get paid attention to, and so being able to kind of share and spread that out, it's kind of counterintuitive of how we were trained in science, right? And so it's just not in our nature yet.
Okay, thank you so much. From my side, maybe Andreas, a last comment, and then
if I may add to the topic, right? So we didn't talk about patient monitoring at home, which I think goes in your direction. So either you do it purposely, right? So the patient knows I'm monitored, or there are some additional sensors, or he even doesn't notice. But I think this will be key. And actually also from a healthcare cost perspective, so we have to do it. So we have to come up with new ideas so that given the fact that people are getting older and older, so we have technology that can handle this situation.
Home monitoring, distant monitoring, and guidance also. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, the panel, for that round. I would like to take the opportunity and open up the floor. And if you have some questions addressed to the outstanding panel that we have here, please raise your hands. I have a hand here that goes up since the very beginning. So please, your name and what you do and what you... By the way, a question ends with a question mark, not with an exclamation mark. Okay.
I like that.
My name is Pernille Tranberg. I work with data ethics out of Copenhagen. I want to hear all of you, apart from Ernst Hafen, how are you going to give us users and patients control over our own data? Meaning that I can access my data in your company, I can see what you have, I can maybe update it, and I can take it to a competitor. That's what I can do after May 25th. How are you going to help me doing that? Have you thought about this? And I would very much like a concrete answer, if possible.
Concrete answer.
At least in Switzerland, it's very simple. The patient data belongs to the patient. And if you want to get any data from our hospital, you get it.
As a printout.
It's informed consent and decision sharing.
Yeah, but it's your data. We are not allowed to... So when you want to get the data, you get it.
Maybe I could jump in and give you a concrete answer. We have a company that we're just launching that's looking at improving outcomes in irritable bowel diseases, Crohn's and colitis. And the way we've figured it out is that you'll be giving us your data, right? It's completely separated from the pharma unit, by the way. It's its own separate company. You give the data at any given time, you can delete. That's your choice, right? But the way we've tried to make it useful is have an Amazon-like approach. So it hyper-personalizes. So it knows exactly what you want. It knows exactly what you're looking for. And when you log on, it gives you things that you might have to spend 20 minutes searching on Google for, and it gives it to you on demand because it just knows you. And so that kind of, that being able to give something and get something, it has to be like a fair trade, right? But at any given time, you should be able to take your data and take it somewhere else. So we take the data privacy quite seriously. I mean, I give my data too. I want to be able to have that function too, right? So that's just one way that we've been handling that. In clinical trials, this is different because you have a different level of consent of what you sign up for. So extracting that data has a bit of IP to it because you're adding some things that were coming from R&D, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just your data; it's your data combined with some technologies. So it's a bit different, but just from a technology point of view, delete it anytime.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Lensell from the Anima Foundation. I have a question for the panel. Going back to the technology side of things, what do you see as the biggest barriers to uptake? Is it a reluctance to change procedures, or is it a lack of money, or is it too much government regulation which is stopping things moving at the speed that you would like?
Thank you. Who would like? Rachel.
Yeah, definitely the last. Regulatory is the key problem, and you get more and more hurdles because of some, black sheep that have done bad to many patients. The whole industry is going to be blamed, and in Europe you have a new medical device directive that is going to be in place in 2020. It's going to be more complicated to register products in Europe than in the US in the future. And this doesn't help innovation. This doesn't help us, all of us.
Thank you. Next, yes.
And I needed to answer also your question about Implantica and your data. So you decide when you want to have a sensor implanted. You decide where the data is going on the watch or on your mobile or to the doctor. So you are in full control. Yeah, we would have access, of course, via our technology. But this is, of course, this is the risk you take.
But as I said, I agree. There's an informed consent from the patient to the treatment center, and as with our tool at Mobile Health or with our studies, we need that the patient is giving the order to send the data. So synchronization with the treatment center is only on the demand of the patient, which is like sending an email. So we don't have constant access to the data.
But misuse is obviously possible. That's a risk we are going to take. But in anything, when you talk about digitalization, this is what it is all about. We cannot stop that 100%. But I personally, I do not so much worry about my data. I don't worry whether somebody can hack my computer or my iPhone. What's on my computer and on my mobile, I couldn't share. So. Which earnings? The company's earnings?
Okay, we are in
me
data.
Personally. Why do you want to know that?
Okay,
it's so little. It's so little,
Okay,
I'll tell you afterwards.
We tell you afterwards. We have a lot of drinks downstairs and so on. Please, we have here somebody who does a very interesting... last few questions. A very interesting background. You come from the technology side. You have a master's in?
Life science and technology.
Life science in the ETH, come from Ernst. And he decided now on a second career or additional to add to become a medical doctor. Because often there is the case that you might be the best scientist, but if you don't know who your end client is or what it means to treat the patient with all its positive, negative. So you go back to school through the most complicated procedure to become a medical doctor at the University of Geneva. Please, your question with a question mark.
Thank you very much. So on top of what Caspar very nicely said, I'm also working in the pharmaceutical industry, basically, and biopharma industry, supporting the top 10 pharma top management for commercial operations. And one of the stakeholders that is critical, obviously, in the pharma value chain are payers. And the prospects of technology usually are payers push back on this, where they say, where is the value of patient support programs? Where is the value of patient-reported outcomes? There are websites such as Patients Like Me, where you can enter, for instance, yourself voluntarily your data, but you show that to payers who you need to convince, basically, to reimburse this product or demonstrate the value of such a initiative, surgery, procedure, device, whatever it may be. They show a lot of pushback. How do you think we can, first of all, do you see this? And second of all, how do you think we can overcome this in a way that is time efficient, that we don't lose the next 10 years convincing that there is value in there?
I think I mean, of course, taking the citizen and patient perspective, I think there is such a large willingness of people to actually actively engage in research as citizen scientists. And we've done a survey on who would do a genome analysis. 60 to 70% of the people usually say yes. And the main reason for doing is to contribute this to science in a fair way. So I think the evidence will come from actually bottom-up citizen science, and that will then change the sort of the institutions. That's my conviction. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. I think when you are working in a system where people trust, then people are extremely willing and supportive to any type of research, even if it doesn't help himself only, but helps to the system.
But we also need to start paying attention to the research that we do ourselves and convincing each other, because, look, there's research that was published over the summer at ASCO, right, with Ishan showing that, like, just having a patient report their outcomes, after they go into remission, actually led to a way to triage them and get them back in. So if your cancer comes back, you come back in. If not, you avoid all the hospitalization costs, leading to, what, a 5.3 overall survival rate increase in terms of months. That outpaces any drug that's been approved by FDA in the last 18, right? So just by squeezing out the care. And it was interesting, there was another one that showed the number one question predictor of whether someone with COPD or asthma would go in for an exacerbation, right, was, how are you feeling today? And if the answer was bad, it was a predictor that literally within the next 24 hours, they were likely to get hospitalized. So I think we have to start getting out of that old, like, we know everything, we've been trained, right? To look at some of these very non-traditional ways of listening to the patient voice, because fundamentally, there's a lot of research and data that shows they actually sometimes do know, we do know that there's something wrong.
Okay, now we have the privilege to have somebody here from the world's largest institution of disease control. Disease control means disease monitoring. It means disease remedy administration distribution, means also prevention. We have a PhD in public health from Johns Hopkins. Zaga, please, you have a question coming all the way from Washington, D.C. to the panel. Thank you.
So I just want to say that I'm not on official CDC business. I'm here for myself. To make sure that I don't get in trouble later. I wanted to ask, well, it's amazing to hear about all the technological innovations that are happening. And I'm assuming that they're largely, the innovations are targeted and crafted for particular populations, right? Those that are able to afford. So to what degree do you find, or what proportion of your efforts are being allotted towards crafting these kinds of innovations for marginalized populations, both in industrialized countries and in non-industrialized contexts?
Yeah, maybe Ernst?
Yeah, so I think it's an excellent question. It goes to the fact that we actually all over the world have similar amounts of data and similar amounts of ways to contribute, especially that also in Ghana and in Ethiopia, the cell phone coverage is almost higher than in some places in Europe. So the sooner you have these mobile technologies, you're becoming a potential, certainly you're becoming a data collector, and you can become a data owner, and where the governance and the value of this data can actually stay in the country. So we have a project to set up MIDATA cooperatives in Ethiopia and Vietnam and any other country, because it can be used the same way. So that not only leads to better, more efficient healthcare, it meets better outcomes data, and it also has a huge economic benefit for the countries.
Thank you.
Do you want a politically correct answer, or do you want a real answer? Okay, so from a big corporate background, right, we struggle with this idea that we develop everything globally, right? And so the rich countries kind of offset the poor, and that's how you get access to medicine. When it comes to digital technologies, a lot of this is coming through startups, and they can't scale at the pace that we would want them to, right? And if you try to scale them, we crash them, right? They can't handle the overload in terms of the systems or the IT or the ability to grow organically. And so sadly, you skew towards where you have the most I'd say opportunity, but really where things are most broken, which tends to be the US, right? So there's a lot of money that pours to the US. There's still a lot of money and opportunity in digital health investment in Europe for sure, but you know, everything's, you know, there's less disparities in care. There's less, right? Having experienced both, right? I can't say I'm an expert, but there's definitely a skew, right? So when you talk about some of the emerging technologies eventually getting to emerging markets, I think they'll get there. It just takes time, and it has to be the right person. To be honest, I love the idea of stealing it. As soon as it comes up somewhere, there's nothing that stops you from like being smart and programming it and launching it in Ecuador.
Perfect. Thank you. We take one more last question. Question mark at the end.
Hello, this is Farhan from VR First. We are trying to help medical schools, universities, and science parks to lower the entry barriers for VR and AR. But you know that there are multiple equipment in the market, so it is quite difficult for the universities to really reach to these multiple devices. So my question is, in the market, we always ask, when will the mass adoption for VR, AR come? So when we look at from the healthcare perspective, when do you think that the mass adoption on the healthcare business will come for immersive technologies like VR, AR, virtual reality, and augmented reality?
Thank you. Who would like to address the virtual? Probably Walter.
You know, virtual reality plays an important role in simulating things and in teaching, and it is a reality there. Augmented reality is coming more and more into the decision-making process. It simulates what we already do. We already make this analysis in our brain individually, but more programs will standardize, improve these things. You can simulate things and then include the virtual reality into the real reality. But when we had the discussion before, does it need a doctor in the future? When it comes to complex problems, I'm convinced that artificial intelligence, augmented reality, all this will help, but we still will mirror what we personally analyze. So this will, to summarize, it will have an enormous impact soon, but it will still be a part of our entire way of working.
Thank you so much. I would like to conclude and try to summarize what we learned today from my perspective. So, well, Andreas, the doctor, will prevail. So he not be abolished, and he provides the trust via an emotional support. While Richard, he stressed that the industry needs to balance between offering new technologies to society and the return to the shareholders that provide the money to experiment with new things with availability to all. From the Stephanie side, he stressed that empathy is key when developing new technology and utilizing data. Andreas believes that we have to keep the doctors in the loop. So IBM is not going to replace the doctor. While Walter says that robots cannot replace the wishes of the patients. That's difficult to do, I guess. And last but not least, Ernst promotes the idea that each one of us is a billionaire in data, and that each one of us should give back at least a little bit from those billions to provide to society for better health. Thank you so much, all the panels that are here, and the members and the guests.